Yeah.
Hello, everybody. For those who are joining us, this is the Absolute Wealth Advisors cybersecurity presentation. We are just going to give everybody a few minutes to log on. So hoping you're all having a lovely day. We're probably all over the eastern seaboard at the moment, from Melbourne or Tasmania all the way to Cairns. So I hope wherever you are, you're having a good day. By the way, my name is Paul Barrett. I'm one of the founders of Absolute Wealth Advisors. And the other person on the screen is Dean Holmes. He's the other founder of Absolute Wealth Advisors.
Hello, Donna. Thanks for having your camera on. Good to see you.
Oh, we're not supposed to have the camera on. Are we supposed to turn it on?
No, everyone can turn their cameras on if they'd like. From a technology perspective, it's much nicer if you have your camera on, so I can see and Paul can see who you're talking to. If the dog starts barking, we might mute you, but that's all. From a practical perspective, we've got if anyone's used Teams before, there's both a chat functionality and a Q&A, so question and answer. So if we are talking about something that you'd like a little bit more information on, or you don't understand exactly what we've spoken about, feel free to put those questions into the Q&A, and Paul and I either miraculously can answer them live. Otherwise, we definitely will come back to you as well in terms of giving you more information as well. So PB, you can. We'll get started for those people that were on time, and the others will come along as we go. This is recorded for everyone to watch back at another time if you'd like to do so, but more importantly, so that we can share it with some other clients of Absolute as well. Over to you, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much. For those who joined a little bit later, my name is Paul Barrett, and the other fellow that you can see is Dean Holmes. We're the co-founders of Absolute Wealth Advisors, and Absolute Wealth Advisors has been going for about 18 years, and many of the original AWA clients will know of Dean and I, but due to our growth over the last few years, there might be a few of our clients who have yet to meet us, primarily because they're clients of either Louise Parker, or they might have been clients of Ross Murray, or Richard Jackson, who was a previous advisor, and we now look after his clients after he retired. So I'd like to welcome you all here. The reason for today's presentation is that clearly cybersecurity is an increasing topic of concern for everybody around their finances. There's constantly reports of cybersecurity breaches in the media, and recently that came home a little bit more to roost because some of the large industry super funds had a small number of breaches as well, and we'll give you a little bit of an update on the background of that. But as an issue of concern regarding our clients and their finances, we thought we'd give you this little presentation to increase awareness of the different types of cybersecurity and some of the things that you can do to protect your own finances against somebody taking either your data or your money. So over to Dean, and he'll lead the presentation.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. So as Paul said, lovely to see you all. For those that I have met many years ago, good to see that you're still here, fit and healthy. And the others, I hope that I can share a little bit about what some of the areas that I'm passionate about in order to keep us safe online. So as I said, pop any questions or thoughts into that chat box if you can as we go, so we can help. So the reason why Paul and I want to bring this to the forefront to talk to all of you about is predominantly, first and foremost, that it can happen to everyone, and the numbers are getting larger and larger. And so the volume of, unfortunately, successful cases is growing, so the number of cases, but also the dollars and cents involved if a fraud is successful is actually getting into the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands for individuals. And so we want to, part of us is bringing this to the forefront so that we know that we have to be aware of these things. And so there's a couple of government websites that are collecting the data. This is not a happy chart to show, unfortunately, but this does show the number and total number of financial scams that have been successful. And we're calling out the age-based nature of it as well. And so it's something to be aware of as we get older, is that maybe the sophistication of understanding the tools is a little bit lower, which is what we're here to help with. But also, I think we trust that Australians are trustworthy people and trust as a result. And so that's another impact that happens in terms of scammers essentially taking advantage of the fact that we are trustworthy overall and trust other humans in Australia. What I'd love to share with you today is a couple of little do's and don'ts from Absolute Wealth Advisors. So we want to participate in this, telling you exactly things that we will do in terms of moving money for you or helping you financially, as well as some things that we'll never do. And this is also what other institutions will never do at the same time. We've got 10 tips in terms of cybersecurity tips that I'll walk you through. And then I'm going to go into some couple of examples of how we can start to see cybersecurity related acts or trying to be hacked, for example, and try to spot the fake ones in terms of some exercises that we're going to go through. And then I've got some services to help in terms of who can come and help continue this journey of education. So Paul and I are going to do this on a frequent basis in order to keep our clients really well informed, but there's also some external government websites where we can watch some educational videos as well to help us understand what's going on in this regard. So a couple of things, first and foremost, in terms of Absolute Wealth Advisors and something that we will and will never do. So Absolute Wealth Advisors will never ask for your password as a key. We'll also never ask you for any of the codes on a multi-factor authentication device. We may ask you for a code from Macquarie Bank, but that one's slightly differently in terms of transferring money. But we'll never ask for these passwords, and we'll never do any transactions between our personal bank accounts and third parties. And that goes to banks as well and other institutions. One of the things that we want to do going forward, and we are doing now, is that we always make sure that we're going to seek multiple confirmations of any request to transfer money. And so Absolute Wealth Advisors can get pulled into the same kind of scams that we're talking about for clients by virtue of receiving an email that we think is from you, but it may be from the scammer requesting funds to be transferred. And so it's really important that you know that we're going to seek confirmation of that request to transfer, especially if it's a bank account that we've never transferred to in the past, because that's our version of being able to check this multi-factor by receiving an email from you, but also giving you a phone call to make sure that you did send that email and request that information. So the 10 tips that I'm going to go through quite quickly before we go into the example. Obviously, I'll share this as a one-pager in terms of our 10 cybersecurity tips. But these are the 10 things, the rest are on the next slide, around that we want you to be vigilant about when it comes to being online and having communication with external parties. So first and foremost, emails and links. So a very common scam that we'll see at the moment is that service providers will email you. And we know that service providers will email you, as has Absolute most likely in the past. And sometimes they include links into those emails. One of the things scammers like to do is hide links. So you'll often get a fake email from the Australian government about your tax refund. And that is not a hyperlink or a link that you can click on that goes to the ATO website. It actually goes directly to a scamming website. So you have to be really quick, really careful when we see any links within emails to make sure we know where that link is going. I'll show you how to do that today in order to be careful. Once again, text messages to your mobile phone. Most text messages are probably unsolicited. Things about you not paying your toll bill or your electricity bill, or once again getting a tax refund, and they're going to contain fake links within the text message to be able to do it. Scammers love to contact you by phone calls as well. And so we need to be careful that you're confident, you know, who the company is that's calling, and we're confident that that company is legitimate. And if we're not confident, we're hanging up and we're calling the company directly back again. Financial scamming, we need to be aware and looking at our bank account transactions on a frequent basis so that we can be seeing if there's been any fraudulent activity. The banks are getting even better at trying to identify this fraudulent activity, but they're constantly playing a catch-up game with the criminals in this regard as well. Number 5 is being aware of your passwords. So one of the things that I'll go through later today is showing you how your passwords need to be long, complicated, and different for providers. It's one of the successes of how the recent superannuation hacks happened at Australian Super and Australian Retirement Trust. Predominantly was successful because humans reuse passwords across multiple providers, and we need to be aware of that and have different passwords, unfortunately, for different providers. I'll share with you how we're going to do that. An interesting one, which will be a new concept for most of you today, is called Check the Dark Web. So I'm going to show you my information and where that sits, but the criminals have a different version of the internet, and our personal information can be kept on that version of the internet. If you were a victim of the Medibank or Optus hacks of past, the hackers stole the information firstly, and then they were seeking to sell it to other people, and they sell it on the dark web. So you need to be aware of this, and I'll show you how to look at this later today. Multi-factor authentication is a buzzword that most providers are starting to enforce. And this is where you log on to a particular website with your username and password. And then secondly, you receive a text message, or you need to enter a code from your authenticator. You enter a code from your phone back into that website to show that you have both your phone in your possession, which is key, and you know the password. An interesting thing that we continue to work through is the idea of potentially having 2 email addresses and 2 phone numbers. So keeping your email that you might use today for all of your chatting with your friends, your online shopping, and everything else you have currently, and then migrating your professional relationships with your bank, your accountant, the ATO, and financial advisor to a separate email address that you don't give to anyone else. And that by doing that, it restricts the number of people that know that email address. And by keeping that restricted, it means you're less likely to be subject to a fraud coming into that email address because nobody knows it. I'll show you what I mean by that with my personal information as we go through. Once again, what we'll never do, so being aware of what providers will never ask you to do allows you to be confident back to scammers. So things like giving passwords and codes over the phone, allowing people to access your computer and remotely help you. These are things that we have to be very careful that we should never let happen without pause and thinking as the first 2 steps before we let it do. And the last one I mentioned earlier is this 2-factor authentication in terms of us and other providers seeking that information. So I've hinted at a little bit of this, but there's a variety of ways that scammers will reach you. The unfortunate thing is this is also the way that your friends reach you, your family reaches you, and most of your other providers, they all try to reach you through these same things. So they send you text messages and phone calls and emails. And so whilst some of these might be legitimate, we need to be cautious and careful around this as well, that when these things come in that are unsolicited, i.e. a surprise to us, like we shouldn't get it. If we get a text message saying that if you've played Monopoly, second prize in the beauty contest, that's most likely at the start of a scam. Often that links to receiving money at the end of the day, which piques our interest, i.e. you're due a tax refund, you're due a money from Centrelink or something like that. So it piques our interest in terms of that, and it lets our guard down by not being aware that this might be a financial scam. So I want to show a little bit about email links and being aware of that. So this is a important part of being safe online, but also it's complicated in terms of what we might need to click on. So this picture here, I'll draw with my pen so you can see, but this picture here has an email over here, and the email address looks like it's going to GoDaddy. Sorry, it's not as big as probably what it should be on the screen, but this email here says that it's GoDaddy, which is a particular website. But then when you hover your mouse above it, as you can see the mouse there, you're hovering the mouse over there, and it's actually going to a different address. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do when we're thinking about email links is, if we're going to think about clicking on it, we actually can hover over it and it tells us where that it's actually going, compared to where you think it going with the letters. And so this is the first trick that scammers do first and foremost. So if you've ever received an email where you think you need to click on a link, most likely your first course of action is to just log on to the website separately, not follow the links in the email. And so clients of Louise Parker have been hearing her message around this for a few years, which is to be very cautious. And she'll say never click on links within emails, because they're taking you to a place on the internet that you may not want to end up being. And then we've got to be cautious about entering our personal information into those websites. On the screen here, as I mentioned, these are some legitimate examples of text message scams that people have received. And it's things that I've been hinting about. And obviously, they're all going to be timely. So some of these are COVID-related screenshots, but if you think of a tax refund, that's really attractive to anyone. So they're going to be interested in receiving a tax refund. And if you could all look at that website, it's called atorefund.com. So that is the first example where we should know, but not everyone will know this, that the ATO website, firstly, is ato.gov.au. It's not atorefund.com. So that's our first tip in terms of trying to pick up on these things. Second tip is that the ATO doesn't have a mobile phone number to call. That's just not a thing. They have a different phone number to call where you have to wait on hold. So you would never call that number. You would look the ATO website, the ATO number up on the phone, for example. But there are two hints there. Third hint is that we already know that everyone has MyGov on their mobile phones or on their internet, on the website. And so if you ever got a text message, even hinting that you may get a tax refund, go into your MyGov, look at your ATO portal, and you'll be able to get that information there. Payments outstanding on toll roads. Only for this only makes people smile in Sydney. Vast majority of toll roads in Australia are in Sydney. So this text message trying to trick people into thinking that their e-tag didn't work while they were driving around Sydney, and they're trying to collect some information here. A really popular one, which I'll read out, is this one here in WhatsApp. I know that's going to be really small in your screen, but this is, for our clients that are on this call, this is your granddaughter pretending, or this is someone pretending to be a daughter or a granddaughter, texting their parents asking for money. Okay, and if I can send you the thing, it's a funny conversation between, hi mum, I lost my phone, here's my new number. And then mum says, who's this? And it said, the response was, it's your oldest daughter. Pretty easy to trick, right? And so the end of it is that they're asking for money for a particular thing. And so this is something that can happen really quick, really easily, is just asking for a small amount of money. Now, it might be firstly a small amount of money, but secondly, they may come back for more money later on because they've tricked you. And thirdly, they may accidentally start to seek, or not accidentally, on purpose, start to seek additional information through this process as well about your personal situation. So there are examples of text message related activities that can come to your phones all of the time, 24/7 essentially. And the scammers are playing a numbers game. If they send out 100,000 of these text messages and get 5 people to respond, it's small by number, but then it's financially rewarding for them as well. So last one, in terms of how they're trying to get access to your information, is that they do make phone calls as well. And the examples of phone calls that we've seen is that they're very good at making the recipient, like you, feel like you're being treated as part of the system. So what I mean by this is that someone will call you, frankly, pretending to be from Microsoft or pretending to be from a bank, and they'll even put you on hold. They'll even transfer you to supervisors. They'll offer to call you back at different points in time and tell you they're calling from the bank, so that they will be quite sophisticated in the way that they're tricking you or scamming you by making you actually feel like it's legitimate. Okay. One of the ones that I became aware of, one of the reasons why we found out that it was a scam, is the scammer was promising to call back at different periods of time. And the scammer did call back a couple of times to build that level of trust over a couple of days. And finally, they offered to call back on a Monday, which happened to be a public holiday in Australia. And the scammer didn't realize that it was a public holiday in Australia. So that's one of the interesting ways that we can trick the scammers a little bit, in terms of asking them some questions if we're not sure. So if you ask a question about It's Always Sunny in Brisbane, for example, or what time is it where you're calling from, asking them some information might give you a hint as to whether it's a scam or not. But secondly, and easily, if you have any doubt that the provider that's trying to call you may not be that provider, you can simply end the call and call the provider back directly. So if someone calls from the Commonwealth Bank saying you've got a problem with your account, you don't have to talk to that particular person. You can just say, I'm going to call you back, hang up the phone, look up the number of the Commonwealth Bank on Google, essentially, and you're able to quickly and easily call back and then go through the same process. We need to be quick at ending phone calls if we think that they're scams, and simply going back to the provider the direct way.
And importantly there, Dean, we need to understand that if it really is the bank, they will have a record of why they've contacted you. They'll have a record of that phone call. They'll probably have a reference number or something. So don't be afraid that you'll lose, if you think this person is trying to do something legitimate and really important, and if you hang up and call back, then you'll get lost in the system. Don't be worried about that, because if the bank is trying to contact you, it's all in their system. The call to you will be in the system. The reference number will be in the system. So you'll be able to get back to exactly where you are very quickly.
Yeah. And that's the scammers typically try to create urgency and secrecy. So the urgency is, I'm calling you, your accounts have been hacked. We need to act immediately. And so they create this urgency which lets your barriers down. And secondly, we've heard of these cases where they create secrecy by actually convincing you not to talk to anyone else about it. So we want you to hang up the phone and call the provider back, or hang up the phone and ask your advisor, or hang up the phone and ask your kids and tell them about this thing. So, but the scammers on the other side are trying to convince you not to talk to anyone else, to create urgency and talk to us today. So we need to be cautious about that. And as Paul said, we hang up and we dial again. So the three things that we leave you with in terms of staying safe online is, the first thing that we need you to do is this element of pause, because the pause is what they're trying to fight against, which is just pausing to have a think about, is it too good to be true? Should I be getting a tax refund? Should I have won second place in the beauty contest? Like, is this actually really a thing that I should be worried about? And then you've got to independently verify that information, which is calling back. It's maybe calling your advisor or talking to your family members saying, this is what's happening. I don't think it's right, but can you help me work out whether it's right? And then we only want to proceed after you've actually sort that external confirmation before you go on and move forward with the provider. There's a government website which is called ID Care, which has a lot of information in terms of videos. So if you were to watch one short video a day for the next 2 weeks, for example, you would definitely increase your knowledge and understanding in all of these areas that I've been talking about. And there's some case studies on here as well. And so case studies are unfortunately real humans that have been vulnerable enough to have it happen to them and want to talk about it. So there's some real human case studies where people have lost money. And so I do encourage you to watch one or two of those, because you get to hear their true and honest story through this process as well, about how they became a victim through this process. And we don't want anyone here to be victims, because we're able to help them as well. Where are you heading, PB, after this? He's trying his gloves on. For those that didn't see that,
I'm breaking them in.
Paul has new ski gloves and he's going skiing in a few months' time. So you saw it here first. Okay. So a couple of things. Some people on the call have iPhones, and some people on the call most probably have a Google Android phone. They're the two most likely systems here. So one of the things that Apple is doing on your phone at the moment, and you may have seen this happen, is when you're on your iPhone and you go to save a particular password, your phone is now going to tell you if that password has been released on the dark web. So that's something I spoke about beforehand. So if your phone tells you that if you're registering for something and you put in a password, like password, and it's going to prompt you to tell you that password is a low security risk, and therefore we need to be changing it to something long and more complicated, I think you should take Apple's advice in relation to that. Often Apple is storing lots of passwords for you, and now also the system will allow you to create longer and more complicated passwords for websites that you're using. And if your phone, Apple or Google, allows you to do that, you should allow it to make a much longer, more complicated password for you to go. Now, this on the screen here is actually my personal information. So I am able to do a search of my email address in the dark web, as I mentioned before. And this is actually what has happened to me personally in relation to my personal information. So over here, this down here is quite small, but these are the number of times, and the list was much, much longer. I've got it over the page here. See all these ones here. These are all the times where my data is available on the dark web. Okay. So this is where someone has stolen my information, my email address and password, most likely. An example of that was Oxfam got hacked. Okay. So this is a little bit old, but they got hacked in 2021. So anyone that had donated money to Oxfam or had registered to do a charity walk or something like that, Oxfam left their back door open and their data was stolen. What data was stolen in my personal situation? My name, my date of birth, my mobile number, and my email address, and the fact that I live in Sydney. Okay. And everyone can see that on the screen now. And that's really important for you to know, is that information is now available for third parties to buy, illegally obviously, but for third parties to buy. And this is how the Australian Super hack, one of the versions of what they did, is the hackers just bought this information and then tried to log into Australian Super. And if I was an Australian Super client still using my old email address and my old password, they may have been able to log in successfully. So this is the example whereby this is a different list that was for sale in March 2021. That is my personal email address there. So that's available to the hackers. And this is a subsidiary of the password that I used back then. Okay, and it's dotted out on the Google platform, but that is, the hackers know my entire password as it stands, whatever that is. Okay, I'm sure all of you can have a pretty good guess and have 10 guesses to work out what that password might be through that process. Don't say it out loud, Paul. So after the call, in terms of the actions, I'll send you how you can do this search yourself through the internet to see how much information you have that might be out there. You can't get rid of it, which is why I'm saying that we need to be cautious and actually change our email addresses over time, change our passwords over time, or change our phone numbers over time to the personal information to keep that safe. Okay. Next thing that I'm thinking and talking about, which lots of providers are increasingly requiring this as default, or you need to turn it on, they've just made it available, is the concept of multi-factor authentication. So very simply, the simplest version of that is a text message. So you log into a website with your username and password, and you receive a text message that you also enter into the screen. So you would have had that with Hub24 or My Prosperity, for example. Some changes in other providers will mean that you'll have access to this in the future to keep your account safe. So MyGov gets a big green tick first and foremost, because MyGov, by default, the way the Australian government has built it is that you have a username and password and a multi-factor, another code that comes out on your phone through that process in order to make sure that they know the right person that's logging into the system. In terms of accessing Facebook, your email, your banking, and your superannuation, we should be checking that we have access to those things and we can turn on that multi-factor authentication. So a couple of thoughts that I've hinted at about how you can continue to keep yourself safe online, and especially safe online over the future, is this concept of saying the email address that I have today is full of spam. Everyone knows it. I've used it for 10 years. Perhaps it's time that I create a second email address simply for dealing with my personal financial information, and that email address is with what I would say a top tier provider, and that might be Apple. That may be Apple or Google as examples, or you may like to pay for an email service. However, all of those things will mean that email address is kept separate from all of your other communications. The idea, taking it to the extreme of having a separate phone number that only the banks and institutions know, it creates some friction in your personal life. I do acknowledge that, but it might be a way in which you separate the two, because once your mobile phone number is out there and known, as my example of my information on the dark web, once that information is known, we can't take it away as a result. Okay. So what is Absolute Wealth Advisors doing? So we're acutely aware of this as well, in terms of the way in which we communicate with clients and have access to information as well. And so some of you on the call at the moment have already experienced the app and the portal, and others we're introducing it for the first time today. But we are going to go on a journey with you from a cybersecurity perspective, and that means that we will have a Absolute Wealth Advisors portal. It's run by a third party called My Prosperity, but it is a password protected Face ID or fingerprint ID portal, both on the internet, on a website with your laptop computer, or on your iPhone or Android in terms of everything else. And this is where we're going to be able to communicate effectively in a compliant manner through the portal. We're going to be able to send and share documents through this portal and see a position of our wealth over time. So for our Absolute clients that you're hearing this for the first time today, we will be talking with you and rolling this out over the next few months as well, so that we can improve the security between yourself and our business. And if you think about that, if you need some help or requesting funds transfer, if you're communicating with us through this platform, it actually means that we know it's much more secure than if you were sending us an email. So finally, we want to make sure that you can call us if you're ever worried about yourself online, if you've ever made a transfer that you regret, if you've been scammed and or if you've received a suspicious text message or phone call, you can call your advisor, and every advisor has their mobile phone number available to your client, to you. And it's obviously it's on the screen here today, but please call us if you're ever in doubt with anything that's going on and there's no one else to talk to. There's no silly questions in this regard. It's really important that if you're worried about it, just call us, because we're going to help you make the decision or give you that quick advice in terms of what we need to do in order to quickly solve the problem. We may be able to say quickly, it sounds like a scam, or we may be able to say quickly, it seems okay, but at least working with us is going to put an extra barrier in the place between us and the scammers in terms of that information. So where do we go from here? Paul and I, Paul may not know this, but Paul and I have promised to do this on a quarterly basis. So it won't be exactly the same content as today, but we will continue to have these sessions, perhaps a little bit more about My Prosperity and the portal of protection, as well as being able to run this appropriately to give you the right education to make sure that you're continuing to be aware online around your financial position. So if there's any questions, you can come off mute very easily. If you'd love to ask a question, that would be great in terms of your engagement and understanding. So Paul and I are very happy to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, you can put them in the chat as well. So I'll just give everyone a couple of moments to think about that.
Any questions, Matt?